Hello, hi, how are you, everyone? Thank you so much for joining. It's a special episode for Let's Talk About Data. We all know that it's a 100th episode for this series. And thanks, all of you, most of you, actually, all of you, other than John. John has recently joined our group. Other than that, all of us being part of this journey. Thanks for again for being part of this journey. Today is again a special session. A lot of people are joining. Thank you. We are going to discuss the journey from end to end journey of data, and we have Bill with us. Hi, Bill. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for accepting our invite on this special occasion. Hey, Shane. How are you? Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. I think you're good. People have joined. So, our today's topic, right? Our today's topic is about the past, present, and future of enterprise data. And we have been just discussing offline that how organizations are not ready to cope up. So that is how I'm going to come up with my first question, which I shared last time. So this question goes again. So again, Bill is our chief guest today. All of us have questions. We will throw those questions to Bill, and we will try to learn again from Bill. So again, my first question related to the same discussion we were just having, that what are the biggest lessons organizations still haven't learned to adopt new technologies XYZ? Yeah, Bill.
Okay, you asked the question. I'll give you the answer, but people don't like the answer. Uh, the answer is that for a technology to make its long-term mark in our industry, it must provide business value at a reasonable cost. If you take a quick look at the history of our industry, the very first thing that happened about in 1960 was the computer. And before that, there was no computer. But once the computer made its appearance, people discovered that they could do repetitive activities, and this alleviated a lot of pain in the world of business. And that had great business value. And then came transaction processing. With transaction processing, we had banks doing bank teller processing. We had airlines doing reservations processing, and transaction processing had great business value. And then along came Microsoft, and Microsoft opened up the world to a different audience that had never been addressed before. And they too, people, not departments in an organization, but people could start to use the computer. And that had great business value. However, over and over, our industry has been sold on what's called silver bullets, where we've been told if you just buy this technology, all your problems will be solved. And I remember such things as big data. I remember such things as data science. I remember such things as the internet itself. And what's happened is that people buy into the silver bullets and then become disappointed at the results. So the lesson that our industry needs to learn is first and foremost, look for business value, because if business value is there, you're on the right track. But if business value isn't there, your technology is going to be gone. I think the most amazing thing about the IT management community is that they buy into these silver bullets, they fail with them, and then 3 years later, they buy into a new silver bullet from the same vendor. If It's like they don't learn. So you ask what lesson does our industry need to learn? It needs to learn that first and foremost, demonstrate business value. Then I will get excited about your technology.
Awesome. So just for everyone, we have a list of questions and I have list those in a sequence manner. So I will be calling out the people in the sequence. So next is Marco. Hi, Marco. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Please go ahead. Shoot your question. Yeah.
Shoot my question. Well, Bill, you've been around for a while, and I just heard that you're never gonna retire. So I hope that is a long life ahead of you. Um, but it also puts the question on more generic. If time and resources are limited, but if you have both of them in unlimited amounts, what would you want to accomplish once you have that? Because there's so much to do. So this is a really an open question, but it also I hope for a really substantial answer in it.
Well, let me tell you how I look at the world. I look at the world of IT as an evolution. If you compare our industry to other industries, we are in the infancy of information technology as an industry. Engineering, you've got walls in Rome that were designed by an engineer 2,000 years ago. If you go to Egypt, you find that the hieroglyphics on the walls of the pyramids are 4,000 years old, and there's some accountant saying how much grain is owed the pharaoh. If you go to the mountains of Chile, you find in caves in the mountains of Chile, you find that they have found that medicine has been practiced at least a crude form for 10,000 years. So when you compare our profession to other professions, it's not a contest. Our profession has been around since roughly 1960. So we are in the infancy of our profession. Now we are evolving. I have to say, and that's good. But what would I like to do? What I dedicate my life to is to the maturing of our industry. And there's so many signs of the lack of maturity of our industry. And I think the thing that's tragic is that the people in our industry are learning by trial and error. They're not listening to the experts that have vision, that can see what's going to happen. Instead, they go buy into the vendors and pay the vendors millions of dollars, fail, and then repeat the same process 3 years later. So my ambition is to be one of the guides in our industry of trying to help mature our industry. And that's my perspective on it.
Marco, you want to say anything? Okay, that's good. You're good with that. Okay, next is we have Remco. Remco, your turn.
Yeah, thank you. And welcome, Bill, as well, of course. I have a question. I'm a trainer, I'm doing a lot of training, and I'm learning new people to learn new stuff. But if you look, you go a long way, for sure. And you will still go for a long way as well. But if you need to advise people coming into our industry right now, what do you advise? What do you need to learn? And is it any different than what you would have said 3 decades ago?
The only difference between today and 10 years ago is the cast of characters and the technology. But it's the same advice that I just got through saying is use your own judgment and brain. Don't rely upon the vendors to sell you their bag of tricks, because the vendors aren't there to help you. The vendors are there to make your money. That's what the vendors are for. And I see the same thing today. Today it's AI. I remember in the past when database this is a long time ago, but if you just go to a database, that's the answer. And then if you go to IBM's DB2, that's the answer. and it's the same thing. It's use your own brain and judgment. Don't listen to what the vendor has to say, but then measure it against the reality of what your needs are. And so that's the same message that was 25 years ago, and it's just a different technology today.
So basically, don't learn technology, but learn the reason behind technology and how business is running.
Absolutely, and you know, along that line, I get asked by people that are coming out of college, going into our industry, what advice would I give to a person starting out? And the advice I always give them is I say, whatever you do, make sure you can relate what you do to business value. Because when it comes time for layoffs, the people that get laid off are the people that understand technology. The people that don't get laid off are the people that provide business value. And I tell that to every graduating senior that I talk with. And I think that's good advice.
Yeah, I think it's great advice even. So it doesn't surprise me, by the way, but yeah.
Yeah, just to add it on top, right, as we are discussing about the basics, right? So Bill, what do you think about data basics? Because we all know that data is the foundation of AI and XYZ, right? So I'm so surprised. I've seen few people who are doing development on AI. I was so surprised they do not even know what is metadata, what is operation, what is data lineage. So they are data modeling, right? Because we see a lot of trends happening where we are saying we don't even need data modeling. We need some or the other way, some kind of data modeling. What's your advice on the data foundations if someone need to jump into AI?
Mustafa, that is a loaded question, because when you say, what do you think about data? First off, data is like quicksand. It's constantly changing. It is in 1960, data was what you put on a punched card and on a magnetic tape. 20 years later, it's what you put into a database. 20 years after that, it's text and what's found. So number one, the question, what is data, is a constantly changing question. And quite frankly, in terms of writing books, I've written a number of books on what is data. So I'm not going to give you the long answer because we don't have time or interest in the long answer. The short answer is when the vendor tells you that you don't need to understand the foundation of data in order to do AI, that is another silver bullet that the vendor is selling. Quite frankly, it says more about the ignorance of the vendor than it says about the person he's talking to. And so not understanding data, not understanding transaction data as it exists today, ignoring that is a huge mistake. And why is it a mistake? Well, it gets back to my old adage of business value, that in terms of the corporate business value, not all, but a tremendous amount of corporate information that's valuable for running the corporation is tied up in that transaction processing data. And for a vendor to come along and say, you don't have to understand that, it would be like me telling you that you don't have to understand what's in your checking account when you write a check. You better understand what's in your checking account when you write a check. So when vendors say you don't, the origins of AI come from academia, and academia has never ever understood the world of transaction processing. So the person that says that is an ignorant person.
Well said, well said. Okay, in our line of sequence, next is John. Hi, John.
G'day, and thanks for joining us, Bill. It's a pleasure to have you. So my question relates to conceptual data models, and I don't want to get into logical conceptual, nor do I want to get into whether they're business information models or ontologies, or enterprise logical data models, all valid terms. My question is, if we take it as given that there is value in collecting a business perspective rather than a technology perspective, where the business expresses what it means by customer or client or contract or agreement or whatever, if we accept that there is value in capturing how the business sees its data, whether it's used for semantics in AI or for data warehousing or whatever, the fundamental assumption seems to be that we have to get all of the enterprise to completely 100% align, or we failed. My thinking is that we can aim for perfection, if you like, but we can happily and in a relaxed manner accept that there will be some agreement, but there will be some bits that don't fit. But I guess the question is, to be of value, do we have to get 100% alignment on terminology, on business relationships, or can we have a mechanism where we accept a certain level of agreement, but flag and record the bits that don't seem to fit yet?
John, that's a very poignant question, and it too deserves a very long answer. And so I'm going to answer you first, and I'm going to give you two answers. One of them indirect and one of them direct. The indirect answer is, if you take a look at the larger forces at work in our world, not the forces being pushed by the vendors, but the forces of reality, what you find is that the whole notion of centralization has changed. Once upon a time, centralization meant put it into a database, a data warehouse, something like that. Once upon a time, there was physical centralization of data. And over time, physical decentralization became an unworkable paradigm for lots of reasons. So what we are seeing today is not physical centralization, but we're seeing logical centralization. And by what do I mean by logical centralization? I see that, yes, across the corporation, there is a need for a corporate understanding of data at the logical semantic level that we need. We've got to have that at the corporate level. So that's one answer to your question. The second direct answer to your question is, there are different kinds of data in your corporation. Are you ever going to take somebody building and working with a spreadsheet and try to have discipline over what they do? Well, if you do, you're a dreamer, because it ain't going to happen. And I don't care what country you live in or what you say or do, it ain't going to happen. And so there's some data in the corporation, very distributed data, that defies the whole notion of discipline and understanding across the corporation. So the second answer to your question is, there's different kinds of data. Some kinds of data do require a corporate universal understanding. answering the question, how much revenue did my corporation make last quarter? You better not have 5 answers for that. You better have 1 answer for that. Other questions. What is the proposed budget of my department for recreation for the month? There's no need for any kind of a corporate understanding or control of that data. So it's a complex answer. Is for some certain kinds of data, you definitely do need a centralized semantic logical understanding of the data. But for truly highly distributed data, it's interesting. You may argue that you need to have control over that, but reality is it ain't going to happen. And so if it simply isn't going to happen, then act accordingly. So, however, that question that you asked is one of the most piercing questions. This whole notion of the merge or the movement away from physical centralization to logical centralization is one of the major themes of what's going on in our corporation.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Awesome. Thank you. By the way, I'm not a big fan of logical because cloud vendors love that everything need to be done in logical. But never mind. Let's go to the next one. Lars, your question is here.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us, Bill.
Thank you.
So my question is related to an acronym that's been mentioned here already, which is AI, which is a different kind of silver bullet. It's probably more like a cannon hitting us. And a few years ago, you gave a very crisp definition of what a data warehouse is, and some of the most important features that it needs to have, like subject-oriented, integrated, time-variant, non-volatile. And that has actually given rise to different and more recent data modeling techniques like data vault and anchor modeling, which I'm part of developing. And given what you can do today with AI, and probably more soon, where AI can itself infer structure from data, possibly meaning, and generate transformations. What do you see the sort of irreplaceable contribution is of having a data model? Or do you need a data model at all in an AI future?
Okay, this kind of goes back to the question I answered just a few seconds ago. Yes, you do need a data model, but not for all of your data. You need a data model for that semantic foundation of data that your corporation runs on. And do you need a data model for that? Absolutely, absolutely, yes, you do. I don't know how you, if you don't have a logical data model, a corporate understanding of your data, you end up with the Tower of Babel. And from the Bible, we know what happened in the Tower of Babel. People couldn't speak the same language, and the whole thing collapsed. And so that's what happens if you don't have a data model. Having stated that, there's certain kinds of data that no, you don't need a data model for. First off, you're not ever going to get a data model. But second off, even if you did, it wouldn't really serve any purpose. So what the vendors are doing is mixing people up. They're talking about the kind of data that you don't need a data model for, trying to ignore what you do need a data model for. Now, this is a trick the vendors have played over the years, that when data warehouse first came about, people said, well, what we need, this data warehouse is a great idea. let's just throw some data together and call it a data warehouse. Let's not integrate the data. Let's not have a data model. And I have to tell you, it frustrated me no end. The worst organization for that was Teradata. The guys from Teradata would say, man, just put your data on Teradata and everything just magically happens. Well, if you don't integrate your data, no, it doesn't magically just happen. So the vendors have confused matters greatly because, and why did the vendors hate integration so much? Because integration is like planting tomatoes in the springtime. I don't know how you can plant tomatoes in the springtime without getting your hands dirty. And vendors and consultants hate to get their hands dirty. But if you want to have tomatoes to eat, I don't know, maybe there is a way to plant tomatoes without getting your hands dirty, but everybody that I know that plants tomatoes does that. And it's the same thing with integration of data, going into the corporation, straightening out definitions, straightening out the semantics, straightening out the code, changing values. No vendor, no consultant around wants to do that as well. And so, so anyway, I hope that gives you some insight into your question.
It sure does, and it's comforting to hear as well. And I'll share that thoughts that you have as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. In our line next is Patrik.
Yes, thank you. My question also sort of hits the same area. When we now see the AI also coming along, there is a lot of thinking. And what I've heard from you was that we talked about the logical model is important, but the physical is not. But that may be an overstatement. But from my point of view is that I still think that the physical integration is valuable for an AI as well. So I still believe in the sort of layered architecture, because if you need the AI to figure everything out from a logical model, all the key integration, all the semantic integration, all the system integration, all the things, it will be such a burden for the AI that it probably make wrong decisions a lot. So therefore, my question to you is really, do you think that there is still a value for the physical integration, or is that sort of more or less dead with AI?
No, Patrik. There's definitely a role for physical integration, but I kind of view this as a hierarchy, and let me try to describe the hierarchy to you. At the top of the hierarchy is the semantic integration, and I don't see how you proceed without that semantic integration at the logical level. However, that semantic integration influences and sets the stage for physical integration below. The problem with physical integration is that physical integration is decided at the time when the system is built. And many systems were built with no thought whatsoever to physical integration. And when you tell an organization they've got to go back and rebuild systems, what's your organization going to do to you? They're going to kick you out, because no organization I know of is serious about rebuilding all of their systems. So at the very top, you've got the semantic logical integration, which is absolutely necessary. At the next level, you've got the physical integration that hopefully corresponds to the semantics. But if it doesn't, at least there's a way to interpret how what you have at the physical level fits with the semantic level as well. So now, if you can figure out a way to tell corporations how to rewrite their systems, then first off, I congratulate you. And second off, you're going to be a millionaire, because but reality is that's not going to happen. But maybe you're just the man to make it happen.
Yeah, I understand. I think we misunderstood each other. I meant the data warehouse. Is there still a need for the physical data warehouse layer where we are subject-oriented integrated on a sort of that not changing the source system. It's not the operational system, but still creating that physical.
Well, the need for a data warehouse will go away when the corporation doesn't need integrated data. When marketing and accounting and finance don't need to have coordination among their departments, then you don't need a data warehouse. And the truth of the matter is, every corporation needs marketing, accounting, finance, and sales to all be working from the same songbook. So no, the need for a data warehouse is alive and well today. And again, if the day ever comes when your marketing organization doesn't need to talk with the sales organization, and the sales organization doesn't need to talk with the accounting organization and engineering and management, if that day ever comes, then guess what? You don't need a data warehouse when that day comes. But in our lifetime, that day's not going to be. I wouldn't worry about that day ever coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I think it was a great explanation on all those. So next is Joha.
Yeah. Hi, Bill. Great to be here. A question on kind of semantics now that we've sort of touched on this topic, and you've done some articles recently with people like Jessica Talisman and so on, and I'm also sort of trying to learn more about that side of things. But the way I see things now is we have this world of data modeling where we, understand, at least we here understand what is a conceptual model, logical model, physical model, and so on and so forth. We understand these as means different abstractions, as it were, of describing the structure of the data in the enterprise, right? But then we have this other side, kind of other school of thought, which Jessica, for example, comes from, which is this semantic web, these ontologies, taxonomies, RDF things, and everything like that. How do you see these things connecting? Because I think this is something where we sort of need to bridge these two areas, but it seems to me that we are still a little bit too far from each other. After all, we are still, all of us, describing the reality of the organization as it comes to the knowledge it has, right? So what's your kind of view on this bridge that we need to build?
Before I go any further, you asked where can you find more information about this? Let me introduce you to my Substack. I have a Substack. It's free. You can go to my Substack and you can find all kinds of information, including the things I've done with Jessica, whom, by the way, is a brilliant person and a friend of mine. Let me describe my journey with taxonomies and ontologies. I've had a very different path than Jessica has had. For a variety of reasons, I've had to take a very practical approach. And so when I talk with Jessica about ontologies, I'm coming from a practitioner having to do it approach, very simplistic. Jessica, on the other hand, has much more of an academic, sophisticated approach in terms of theory. When I talk about ontologies and taxonomies, there's very, very little theory, and there's great amount of practicality there. That's because I've spent 20 years working with taxonomies and ontologies, but not at a theoretical level, at a practical level. Jessica, on the other hand, has had a different path that she's followed, and she's taking a look at a lot of the details that have kind of gotten swept under the rug in the work that I've done. So Jessica and I did a paper together in which we tried to describe where we meet. And again, on my Substack, you can find that paper. You can also find a lot of other papers. I'm currently working on a very large paper on data governance and data administration for the AI environment. And that should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. But I was looking at it just yesterday and that. So anyway, Jessica and I do have a meeting of the minds. We come from a very different perspective. And I recommend taking a look at the paper that we did together.
Yeah, thanks. I've actually read it, and I was just sort of thinking of this sort of more generally, that is this actually the way for us to connect these two communities, to discuss together, to write together, or how do we bridge these gaps between these different communities of thought?
Now, I'm not talking about Jessica, but I'm talking about the academic community.
Yes.
The academic community does what I consider to be a bunch of silly things. They do things that don't lead to any positive results, and they're interesting. They're interesting. Let me give you one example. I've seen numerous papers written on taking a look at text and understanding text in terms of chunks, and looking at the chunk and seeing how far apart words are, and that's interesting to sit here and say when words are this far apart, they mean one thing. When they're this far apart, they mean something else. From a practical standpoint, from having to actually build an ontology and taxonomy, the difference of the distance between words is nonsensical. It may make a difference 1% of the time, but 99% of the time, it flat doesn't make any difference how far apart words are in a chunk. And so this is what I mean by the academics feasting on trivia that leads nowhere. And you might ask what if you're interested, and this is a truly long subject. I'll describe to you what we've done with ontologies and taxonomies, but I don't want to. That's only if we have time today, or if you want to call me up, and I'll be happy to have a private conversation with you and show you what practical ontologies and taxonomies look like. I just say it is a large subject, and we could be here longer than you want to be here. But I will be happy privately. Send me an email, and I'll be happy to do a Zoom session and show you what the reality of practical ontologies and taxonomies look like.
I have an interjection, if you may, if it's okay with you, Juha.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Yeah, because this is a dear topic of mine, the ontologies and taxonomies of the world. And I mean, there is a notion at places. I dropped audio, sorry about that. Give me a second. And there we go. Okay, now I think it's working. Sorry, tech problems.
No problem.
So there is a notion that there should be one language for data. I mean, it's of course coming from the data warehouse idea, but looking at reality, as you're saying, Bill, there's so many different dialects out in the line of business. one department says this is revenue, and another one says, well, we have a different definition of what revenue is, and both are correct in their context. So is there the idea of one language? Is that still valid? Or should we embrace dialects and just ensure we have a common language that we can agree on, but also embrace the local dialects?
Okay, first off, that's a very real question that you asked. I mean that's based in reality. Let me answer it with how I may give you first a theoretical answer and then a practical answer. That at a very high level, indeed, there should be one language and one definition. However, at a lower level, there can be variations of the language. So that's the theory. Let me give you a practical answer. One time I was sitting in a management meeting, and the president of the company asked the people, how much revenue did we have this quarter? And accounting gave one answer, marketing gave another answer, and sales gave another answer. And the president turned to me and said, Bill, how do we resolve this? I mean, who do I believe? Accounting, sales, marketing? I don't know who to believe. And I said, look, here's what you need to do. Yes, you need to understand that there is revenue. That means money. But you need to have a refined definition of what is meant by revenue. That for example, the accountant for revenue means a revenue that is booked revenue. And there's a legal definition of booked revenue. The marketing definition of revenue is revenue that's potentially possible. The sales department says revenue is what has come through the door. Now, those are all three different forms of revenue. So from a data modeling standpoint, what I would do is I would put revenue at the top semantic level, and revenue is money, okay? Simple. However, I would put qualifying attributes. Is the revenue booked? Is the revenue projected? Is the revenue actually realized in the bank? And so once I take that high level semantic understanding and break it down to the qualifying attributes, now I can start to make sense of what the person from accounting, marketing, and finance are saying.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think that's the core of the hallucinations we're seeing in AI today, that you don't have the definitions clear, which means when you ask for revenue, which revenue are you actually asking about? This attribution that you're talking about doesn't exist.
Well, it exists, but it's ignored by the vendors.
Yeah.
And the vendors don't. The vendors are very academic oriented, and they don't want to hear about the transaction corporate processing environment. They want to run screening away from that as fast as they can. And I have to tell you that gets back to my original theory that unless you have business value, you're not going to succeed. Well, if the vendors run away from all of that transaction data has got 90% of the business value of the corporation tied up in it. And it's like a bullfighter running from the bull. Well, you put the bullfighter in the ring not to run from the bull, but to deal with the bull. But the vendors are saying, "Oh my gosh, there's a bull here, and he might hurt us. I'm going to go hide somewhere." And so that's what's happening.
Thanks for the answer. And I won't hold up the conversation today, but I think there's a longer conversation between you and I, Bill.
Certainly, I'll be happy to have them. By the way, along that line, I'm happy to have private conversations. Just contact me and we'll set up a time.
And I would love to be part of that, because I am doing all this kind of stuff nowadays with using AI. Maybe I can set up this session with Daniel, Joa, Bill, and myself. Anybody else want to join, we can do that. Awesome. So next, Mark, I think we are discussing the exact same thing on which Mark works on. Yeah, Mark.
Absolutely, absolutely. Bill, lovely to see you again. I don't know if you remember, maybe not, but we have met a couple of times in Sydney. And I do want to say your thoughts on the vendors really resonates with me. I hate the vendors. And also you mentioned some stuff about Teradata, and I thought that was really good as well, because I have the same thoughts of Teradata based on the fact that I actually joined Teradata back in about 2001 maybe, with a guy called Nick Johansson, and I think a mutual friend of ours called George Coleman.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
George.
Yeah, so we had a very different bent on the whole Teradata thing, which was to work with the business to model their definitions for the core business and get that core done, to then create a third normal form integrated warehouse for the core of the data.
Yep.
And that really drives me to, I guess, my questions now, which are, I've always thought of architecture, data warehouse architecture, as really looking at the organizations. What are their strategy? Are they, do they want speed? Do they want quality? Do they want whatever do they want? Plus also their capability, because I've been in so many organizations where the builders are, have constrained money, constrained capabilities, and so on. And architecture to me has always been around, okay, what can we do for your capability and your money to align to your organizational strategy? So, you mentioned with Teradata, and it was the sales guys that came in with their, because we used to go in a model and we'd take like 6 months with 1 or 2 people working with the business, modeling with the business. And when NCR took over Teradata, they were like, this is too long. We want to sell boxes. We'll come out with this industry model. We just sell you the model and you just put your data in it. And it's like, no, we don't want to do that. That's just, it fails. It always fails. Where was I going with this? So we had the Teradata solution methodology, the original one, which was to work with the business. And I've lost my train of thought here because I've gone on a rant against Teradata. But
I'll tell you what, I'll give you a chance to think about it. I have to tell you a Teradata story. For many years, I spoke at the Teradata conference. They had a partners conference every year.
Yeah.
And one year I was getting ready to go to the conference, and I got a phone call from Teradata, and they say, you're not welcome here. We don't want to hear from you anymore. And they have never, ever spoken to me since. And so I don't know who it was, but somebody at Teradata severed the relationship. And quite frankly, Teradata has gone for the longest time. In the early days of Teradata, they were an innovative company that had a great direction and doing things that IBM wasn't doing, and that was great. But boy, they took a left-hand turn, and about the time when they said that I was no longer welcome.
Yeah, I hear you, Bill. And I guess my question here really was around that, just load your data and everything will be fine kind of point that you made that they were going towards. So my question is kind of 2 points. The first one is your thoughts on Data Vault, because to me that's kind of doing the same thing. And the second question is around, how much technologies are driving the architectures, because for us working with Teradata, when we could do a third normal form, other organizations were like the Oracle shops or whatever, where they couldn't do third normal form realistically with performance, were going the Kimball direction of let's just build star schemas. And to me, it was everyone had this mentality of, I'm going to choose one of these options, and it's based on what's the technology that I like. Do I like Oracle? Do I like Teradata? Do I like SQL Server or whatever? Right, which to me was the wrong thing. You're not looking at business value. You're looking at what your technology and your chosen technology can do for you. So it's kind of
that was the vendor selling you a silver bullet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And every silver bullet has led to disappointment, failure, a loss of money, and whatever. In terms of architecture, what has evolved, as far as I can tell, architecturally between the Kimball Inmon debate is that whether they liked it or not, there was a merger of the architectures. That people would build the classical data warehouse for the believability of data, and they would build the Kimball data marts for the analytical speed with which it could be done. And so having a data warehouse, data mart architecture is what evolved. Now I got to tell you, let me tell you another little story. A long time ago, when Kimball was first coming out, okay, let me talk about Ralph Kimball very quickly. When I had my own conference, original conference on data warehouse, the first person I always invited was Ralph Kimball. That in terms of a friendship basis, in terms of I've never ever, not once, had a bad word with Ralph Kimball. And I used to read these things in the press, and I thought somebody is dreaming or something. But when Kimball came out, I approached the Kimball group and said, "Gee, guys, can't we work together? Can't we create a data warehouse as the foundation core data? And can't we create the data mart as the basis for doing analytical processing off in your departments?" And man, trying to work with the Kimball group was like trying to talk with the devil. That in terms of, man, they didn't want to hear it. They said absolutely not. And I'll tell you who didn't help things at all. Informatica came along and started having to sponsor Kimball, and Informatica went around saying, "Oh, you don't want a data warehouse. It takes too long. What you want is one of these data marts." And it was very appealing. Data marts are very appealing because you can construct them very quickly. And I've never seen a data warehouse that you can construct quickly. There may be one out there, but I haven't seen one, and I really don't believe it can be done. But so Informatica came along with Ralph Kimball and told the world, "You don't need this data warehouse. That's a high theory. You'll never build it," and whatever. And yet the evolution of things, a lot of people have evolved to the core data being in the data warehouse, the analytical data being in the data mart, and that architecture works just fine. But I tried to get the Kimball group to work in alliance with me, and boy, you talk about being slapped in the face. I was told what a dumb person I was by the Kimball group.
Okay, that's a very disappointing story. But the thing is, our next question, I think, really connect with this one. Hey, Mark, you want to say something?
Yeah, look, thanks, Bill. I appreciate your input there, and I think we're of like minds. Great to see you again.
Nice seeing you.
So taking this opportunity, let me connect one of the questions. Why haven't any new data warehouse methodologies emerged in last 30 years, but that are suited to modern platform technologies? Like we have Vault, we have Your One, we have Kimball. We have only this 4, 5 data warehousing modeling. What he means is why there isn't more.
Okay. My perspective on that is that data warehouse is not a technology. Data warehouse is an architecture. Data warehouse fits on many technologies. It fits on Oracle. It fits on Teradata. It fits on Snowflake. It fits on Databricks. So data warehouse is an architecture and a concept, and it is not a technology. And as such, the architecture doesn't change. It's like the columns in the Acropolis in Greece. Those columns were built, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, and they're still here today, and they're still beautiful. That was architecture, and architecture doesn't change if it's specified and built properly. So what has changed are the implementation of the architecture, and you can implement data warehouse lots of ways. What's interesting is the whole notion of, to me, the whole notion of centralization. Data warehouse has evolved. When data warehouse was first thought of, conceived, there was really only physical centralization of data. That's all there was at that moment in time in history. But today's world, physical centralization is not a reality in today's world. So data warehouse, to me, has evolved from a physical centralization of data to a logical centralization of core data, recognizing there's a lot of data that doesn't belong in a data warehouse and never will. So why hasn't there been any new renditions of data warehouse? That's because data warehouse was and always is an architecture.
Awesome. I think our obvious written questions are already done, but I would like to invite few other folks to ask few questions. Dan.
Okay, thank you for being here, Bill and Mustafa, for holding the session. It's really great to see you both. Now, given vendors continue to sell these 6-figure or more silver bullet tools wrapped in marketing sound bites that we've all heard of, bronze, silver, gold, you know what I'm referring to bypass what I think is a fundamental human communication problem, one requiring judgment, wisdom, and discipline. And that real hard pain is for the organization. It's burning massive budgets on tech shortfalls while failing to fix those fundamentals. It's a failure I've personally seen cost enterprises billions. I would say we've been dealing with data and information since the dawn of time. The technology's changed from the hand, the chisel, the pen, and finally to the computer. Yes, we've been focused on the computer area now, but we know the experts are here in this room right now. And I agree with you that the truth of what's really required is often just too uncomfortable. So the questions, 2 of them for you. So if the underlying problem is a cultural refusal to do the hard work of establishing that sender, the transmission, what happens in the middle, and the receiver usage principles, what potential solutions actually work to shift the focus towards the right place, the right format, the right risk, the right outcomes, and fit for purpose? And how do we weigh the intense organizational effort, political and fiduciary risk trade-offs required for stakeholders to finally choose difficult human resolve over comfortable vendor tooling?
Dan, I'm going to answer your question a little obliquely, but as far as I'm concerned, it goes back to the whole notion that our industry is in a very early state of maturity. We're a very immature industry. And right now, how does our industry learn? What you're talking about is how do we learn that there's a proper way to do things and then the vendor way of doing things. And the way our industry learns today is by trial and error. They learn by pain, and that's a crude way of learning. But that's how they learn. So we've got to have some more dead bodies. We've got to have some more screaming people. We've got to have more failures. You know, let me tell you a little story. A long time ago, probably 6 years ago, something like that, I was talking to a large insurance company in the United States called AIG. You may have heard of them. They're on the East Coast of the United States. And I was talking to one of the people there, and I was saying, gee, let us show you how you can hear what your customer is saying, how you can hear the voice of your customer. And the guy says, well, that's interesting. And it said, but we can't. I was offering to put up a pilot program for $10,000. And he said, oh, we can't do that, though. We can't afford it. I said, why can't you afford it? And he says, because IBM has sold our corporation on big data, and we've committed $1 billion to IBM and big data. And I thought, oh my God. So here we are with a corporation that's stupid, excuse me, AIG, stupid enough to commit $1 billion to a vendor and not smart enough to commit a pittance of that for understanding real business value. That's an example of the kind of pain that corporations have got to learn from. Now, the really stupid thing is corporation after corporation doesn't learn from that. They go and spend $1 billion 1 year, and 3 years later, they're spending another $1 billion to the same vendor for some new cockeyed scheme. But anyway, and I usually, by the way, when I'm talking on tape that can be recorded, I usually don't call an organization stupid, but AIG Corporation was plain stupid. Excuse my...
That's a really great way of looking at it. And I think that the one other final part of that is if you have a look at the receiver part of your data pipeline, when it's no longer human looking at a dashboard, but an autonomous AI agent, making split-second decisions, what happens when the agent makes those decisions with no human context, no real judgment to understand or interrogate the data? And that seems to be the route we're now heading towards. And for me, the answer of what's really needed is it comes down to integrity, legitimacy, and architecting coherence, holding consequence to prevent reckless success in these organizations. But it seems to me they don't want to do this, and they certainly don't have the foresight ahead. And as you say, they want to deal in pain.
They want to wallow in pain. And again, that's a sign of the immaturity of our industry. 100 years from now, people aren't going to enjoy wallowing in pain. But today, that's what we're asking for. I will say this much. If there's any way, and I don't believe this is possible, but if there's any way that AI can actually do what it says it does without the core data from the corporation, and if they can truly deliver real business value, then they will succeed. But I don't believe they can do that. But time will tell.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan, for your question. Daniel, you're next.
Thank you. I have more of a reflection, but I think it can start the conversation. Because what you were saying earlier here, Bill, is that data warehousing is not a tool, it's an architecture. And even though, what you wrote many years ago. You're not that old, Bill, but many years ago. We're still living in a world where data is not designed as a free resource in enterprises. It is a consequence of the user interface in the application you're working in. I think that's the core of the problem. We haven't really embraced architecture yet. Even though the awareness is there, systems are still built as silos.
And Dan, I'm going to give you the same answer I gave just previously. It's a sign of the immaturity of our industry. And we've got to have some more pain. We've got to have some more arrows in someone's chest. We've got to have some more people burned at the stake. We've got to have some real pain to understand the value of architecture. But you're
why
absolutely
haven't
right.
why haven't we gotten there? I mean, that's what I mean by the idea has been there for 30 years. The knowledge has been there, but nobody seems to be applying that knowledge enterprise-wide.
No, that's not true. No, there are people that have no, that's not true. There are people that have been very successful with data warehousing, and thank God for them. So you say nobody. No, that's not true. There are people that have succeeded. But going back to the whole notion of an evolution, how long did it take medicine to evolve? Medicine has been evolving for 10,000 years. How long did it take accounting to evolve? Accounting has been in evolution for at least 4,000 years. So when you take a look at our industry, we've been around as an industry, let's see, 60, 65, 70 years, something like that. That's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket. And so you and I and everybody on this call are pioneers in an evolution. And it's frustrating because quite frankly, as architects, we're visionaries. And it's frustrating that the people that we talk with don't listen to us and take what we say with for real. I'll tell you what I felt like. There are pictures in the Bible of prophets, and these pictures of prophets in the Bible are always wearing flowing robes. They have a long beard. They've got a staff, and they're yelling to people, and they're out in the desert, and they're prophesying things. And in the Bible, they really did prophesy things. But when I was talking about architecture to people in a day and age that had never seen architecture, I felt like one of those prophets from the Bible. The good news is that the one thing, you were wrong about something. You said nobody. That's not true. There have been some very successful data warehouses, and so you might have, if you'd have said a lot of people or most people, I would have agreed with you. Nobody, that's not true.
No, it was. You're perfectly right, but it's not common.
It's not common. Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah, and still we're now expecting 100% of workforce to use data as a resource in agentic AI without laying the foundation.
It's not going to happen. I mean, the business value, 90, I don't know, some large percentage of the business value of data in the corporation lies in those corporate transaction processing systems. That's where the corporation understands how much money are we spending, how much money are we making, are we getting new customers, are new products being accepted, what about sales for old products, what about rejections and lack of quality. Those are the issues the corporation runs on, and that data is all locked up in those transaction processing systems. And if agentic AI comes along and says, well, we don't need that data, it's like me being a soccer player telling you that I don't need to run. I got news for you. You can be a soccer player, you need to run. And so they're fooling themselves. But I will say this much. The academic community that fostered AI has never understood, embraced, or accepted the transaction processing environment. I don't know whether they're scared of it or it's too complicated. I don't know what the problem is, but you tell me agentic AI doesn't want to go in and look at that corporate data. That's just plain stupid. They're not going to succeed.
I think the problem is that you're lacking the actual context and knowledge that you have in the organization. You don't have that readily available, that knowledge layer that could be put into semantics. I think that's what makes it difficult, because it's not clean. You need to talk to people. You need to interact with people. You need to understand things. I think for me, that's the challenge.
What I have seen is why they don't do it, because if you do it, then you cannot sell your new technologies and again, right? So I think, Mark, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, and I think this is a really good point that Daniel, that you're making here, and Bill also. Data warehouse success is out there. Doing that work with the business first. I have to say, one of my successes with the data warehouse, using Bill's approach, but also working with the business first, we actually paid for the warehouse during the user acceptance testing because of the amount of revenue leakage and stuff that we discovered through that data warehouse. But that was because we had really clear definition around what the data should mean, rather than what we were seeing in the data. And yes, you can get that knowledge layer is there if you work with the business with the right people. I mean, I have one client now with that. My process now is, rather than data modeling, is to do definition, business definition. But we have one client we've got 45 business areas who have agreed on 1,700 business definitions. And those are not just defined once and leave it. These are ongoing maintenance. They are reviewed annually. These drive the data models, and these drive the data dashboards and everything else, so that they get a nice clean, elegant designs of their dashboards without all scrap and rework. So it's possible, it can be done. It's just a matter of whether or not the organization is ready to accept that. And in these cases, it's always having a senior exec who gets the reality versus what the vendors are selling. And that's the issue that we're all up against, is, are the people we're working for following what the vendors are saying, or are they thinking for themselves?
And that gets back to the maturity of the industry. And the immature industry will listen to the vendor. A mature industry will think for themselves. And by the way, Mark, just for your information, if you're really interested, that list of attributes and data in the organization on a business by business basis has already been done, and I'll be happy to show it to you. We don't share it with people, but we'll certainly show it to you. That's in our ontologies. We've built the definitive ontologies for, let me just run through my list here, airlines, banking, construction, insurance, medical, pharmacy, real estate, restaurants, telecommunications, oil and gas, and so forth and so on. So we have built those, and so that list exists. Again, we don't sell them, but we use them in our processing.
Awesome.
By
I
the
think,
way,
yeah, please go ahead.
one more question, Mark, or one more comment. Mark, when I don't know if you're aware of this, as this is probably before you came to Teradata, but when Teradata first started, their sales approach was to hire a whole cadre of subject matter experts in every kind of industry that you can think of. And so Teradata started off as let's understand the business of our customer and then apply our technology to it. And in those day and age, I got along very well with Teradata. But then the salesman took over. The salesman said, gee, we've got to go out there and move more machines. I got to make my quota. And so Teradata went away from that sales strategy of understanding the business. And that's where I think Teradata fell off the bandwagon.
Agreed.
Okay, our time check is there. Like we have only 14 minutes left. So next, I think I would invite Nathan. You have any question?
Yeah, hey, Bill. Thank you so much for these questions. It's been such a good session. So I think the question I have for you is, we've talked a lot about the ontologies, the models, and that sort of stuff. How much do you see AI as being something that can like accelerate the adoption of the core data warehouse, like you mentioned, with the better ontologies and semantics? Do you see that as an enabler, or do you see it as it's just going to get in the way?
Boy, that is a loaded question if I ever heard one. And I hate the answer I'm giving you, but
it's not loaded. It's just
the answer is yes and no. And I hate to say yes and no. AI definitely has the capability of giving people the ability to ask questions that they've never been able to answer before. And in that regard, it's a great enabler. My daughter, who's a vice president of a company in Florida, I see her use AI, and she uses it to great effect. Yes, AI has great potential. However, if AI doesn't embrace the world of transaction data that's waiting them in the corporation, if they continue to ignore it and willfully ignore it, then they're only going to be able to go so far. They're not going to be able to go fulfill their potential. So yes, AI does have great potential, and it's really elegant in what it does. But if they take, I don't know why academics refuse to go into the corporate store of data, but and it's been, by the way, that's not anything new. It's been that way for as long as I've been around, and so for whatever reason, if AI continues to ignore the corporate store of information, they will never achieve their full potential. So again, I hate answers that are yes and no, except that your question is yes and no.
When you thank you for that, Bill. That's great. When you say that, so isn't that what sort of MCPs are meant to do, right? So I can go into a MCP in, I don't know, let's say in Snowflake. I can ask it a question. It's been loaded with sales orders and transactions and what have you. So while maybe Anthropic aren't training their sets on transactions, does that make sense? I don't even know if it does. I can go and use AI on transaction data from using an MCP.
Next, thanks, Nathan. Next, Marek, you definitely need to have a question.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to meet you all the guys, and I'm really, really happy to listen to everything what you're saying. And most of the questions was already answered what I had, so thank you for that. What I would like to ask is if there is maybe a new kind of industry coming into warehousing, which could be says like when Bill started the data warehousing, there was a really structured data and structured systematic layers and all these connections between them. So does AI bring a new way of AI warehousing possibility with the kind of a knowledge index? Would that be possible to add to data warehouse?
From the very beginning, there has been this notion of a virtual data warehouse. It's a virtual data warehouse is something that you fool yourself into thinking is a data warehouse. The problem with a virtual data warehouse is it's never integrated. And something that isn't integrated is not a data warehouse. Now, if you were to tell me that you were to somehow be able to integrate data and then manage them virtually, I would say that's a wonderful idea. I love that. But throughout history, this whole notion of a virtual data warehouse is somebody that's too lazy or too ignorant to understand that until data is integrated physically, and it doesn't have to be centralized, it can be distributed all over, but it's got to be integrated. And you say integrated, what do you mean? Let me give you a quick example of integration. One application has gender as M and F. Another application has gender as 1 and 0. Another application has gender as X and Y. Well, if we're going to integrate our data, we can't have that. We've got to decide what gender is. And male and female sounds kind of good to me. We don't have to have that, but what we have to have is one definition, one physical definition of that data. And that hasn't changed. So AI is not magically going to be able to build a data warehouse until they understand the integration issue. And as far as I can tell, they have no idea about what the integration issue is all about.
Awesome. Let's take. We have a time check. Thanks, Marek. We have a time check of 5 to 6 minutes. Tom, do you have a question?
Yes, I do, and thank you very much. So first of all, thanks, Mustafa, for having me here. Bill, it's a pleasure to finally meet you after all this time, and happy upcoming birthday. First of all,
you had to mention that, didn't you?
Sorry. Sorry. Given the dates involved, yes. Yeah, since we're so close to it. So sorry about that. But anyway, it's so anyway, I got into the area of data warehousing early 2000s with Cognos and have been throughout my career. And in the world where I fit between that continuum of academic and practitioner, I'm definitely on the practitioner side. And you talk about how data, what we do, computer science, all this is being a relatively new profession. I think that it's being held up by one of the oldest professions, the second oldest profession, which seems to be consulting and the vendors that go with that. And so I think that you talk about the need for dead bodies because they're not listening. I think, is there a room in the world for a great leap forward by, say, if you did a master class on here's the world of data and AI, here's how to logically think, how to sort it all out? Because it seems to me that you coming up with that kind of master class, not on the data side, not on the technical side or ontologies, but having the ability to say, here's a master class for all business people. Here's how you need to deal with data and the vendors. Have you ever thought of doing something like that?
Oh, yes, I have. And I would be very open to doing something like that, collaborating with people. And the answer is yes, I have. Now, let me tell you something. You've got to understand that when the vendors hear about this, they're going to run as fast as they can away from it. Now, they shouldn't, but they're going to, for a variety of reasons. So you have to understand, but I actually put together, golly, it's been about 5 or 6 years ago, a class on textual analytics that was a start in that right direction. Yes, I very much want to put together a course, but I also understand that in terms of getting vendor support, it's not that we're going to get vendor support. We're going to get the academics and the vendors are going to do everything they can to prevent people from attending the course. And you need to be prepared for that. But and I don't know why. Well, I know why it is. But and by the way, I'm you're right. I am a few days away from a birthday. I'm 80 years old right now, and I keep getting people ask me when I'm going to retire, and the answer is when I'm 6 feet under in the ground. That's when Bill Inmon will retire.
Okay,
thank you.
Awesome. So, Jackal, a new participant here. Do you have any question? No? Okay, never mind. So we have a time check here. So let me throw this last question. I think Bill will like this question, like importance of converting unstructured data into structured data, because unstructured data is coming from everywhere and it is 80 to 90%, right? And people are processing it, everything in memory. And I feel there are a lot of consumption power, compute power being used. I'm a big fan of converting unstructured into a structure before we make any decisions or analytics or dashboard accuracy. Bill, what's your take on it?
Well, Mustafa knows that that's a loaded question because we've worked together in the past. First off, given that we're closing here, let me say one more time, take a look at my Substack site and you will find all kinds of interesting things there. And there's going to be a lot more interesting things to come. However, one of the mistakes the academics made or are making today is in dealing with chunks. They should have been dealing with words, not chunks. And because words are the fabric of language, not chunks. But the reason why, I don't know if you know the reason why they deal in chunks, but in the one of the origins of AI was a gentleman named Noam Chomsky. And Noam Chomsky was not a technician, and he did a lot of foundational work on linguistics, and he dealt in chunks. I think if Chomsky would have known that we have the power with a computer to deal with words, that he would have changed it. But Chomsky told everybody, go deal with these chunks. And dealing with chunks first off can be done, but is it an efficient or even a very good way to proceed? And the answer is it's very inefficient to proceed. So the approach that I've taken, and I'll be happy to demonstrate it privately. Anybody wants to see it, is to not deal with text in chunks, but to deal with text in words. And once you start to deal with text in words, all of a sudden things become much more efficient. Anyway, thanks for asking that question. But I definitely think that we should be rethinking the very foundation of what we're doing. But then again, I'm just a guy in Colorado. I don't have the $10 billion that OpenAI has. So I really, my voice doesn't count. Actually, my voice does count, but not in the way that OpenAI's counts.
So that's the only question I have to disagree with you. And with that, we close our session. Thank you so much, everyone. We love Bill. We will love to have more sessions with you. We keep reading your Substack. Thank you so much for taking time. And thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Mustafa. Thanks for hosting this. Thanks, Bill.
Great
Take care.
session.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.